I guess you had this idea, you had this chance encounter with this gentleman, and you said, okay, I have this idea and I have this vision. And you had already been doing some work in the community. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you actually got this off the ground. Starting up a nonprofit, a lot of people have the idea of doing that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, what that was actually like to get an organization going?
Well, I have to be totally honest with this. When I was working it was called Lincoln Action Program, and it's a nonprofit, and it was helping low income families become self sufficient, and that's where those kids came involved because a lot of the kids were in justice involved. So I would have to say, Dave, what gave me the tools and education was the executive director of that agency. She says, Jim, this is how grants are written. This is how programs are developed. This is funding streams that we go through in the city. So it was my college, Dave. It was that school from 94 to 2001. I was allowed to immerse myself in all the components of a nonprofit, different areas of that nonprofit, as well as running the kids program. I pieced it together and I said, wow, okay. And if it wasn't for the tutelage of that executive director and the finance person that said, Jim, this is how it's written, and they allowed me to help write grants. I actually went to funding sources, foundations in the Lincoln area. And my first grant that I wrote, I submitted to I can share it, Woods Foundation. And Pam Baker, the executive director, said, Jim, let's have coffee. And I said, okay, I got the grant, right? And and over coffee, she slid the paper back to me, and it was marked in about 1,000 red marks. It was bad. She says, yeah, you need to make these changes. And this is, then she gave me some websites, some webinars to, at the time, to learn some of the stuff. But it was trial by error. And I knew an attorney, and I had a couple of good friends. I told them about me and Mike meeting and me wanting to expand, because people said, Jim, why did you stop that kids program? I said, well, I really didn't stop it. I just expanded to adults and kids, and I can reach a lot more. So I didn't stop. I just expanded. So got it. So that's how I got started with it was $300 to file the federal 501c3. I had the articles, incorporation, and bylaws, and all the everything. It took about a year and a half of writing, of getting those nuts and bolts together. And we got our provisional 501c3 6 months after filing. And after that, it was a year before we officially became, about a year after that, we got our official letter saying that we're out of the provisional stage.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of folks, when they have this idea of starting a nonprofit, they have to make, I think a really great thing to do is go volunteer first, right? Get involved in a program that's already doing the work so you can learn and really make sure that you're not doing something redundant. And it sounds like, you had great leadership around you who was actually able to show you the ropes and kind of help give you that knowledge. So that's awesome.
Yeah. It was hard. It was a little bit hard because relationship. This Pam Baker told me, she said, Jim, we do not fund programs. And I said, huh? What you have demonstrated at Lincoln Action Program, we saw, because they gave us the initial $50,000 to start the kids program. And they said, well, we took a chance. We believed in you. We knew that you was going to accomplish what you said that you was going to do. And they were realistic. They weren't pie in the sky ideas, but they were tangible goals and objectives that and it fit our giving pattern. It fits what we give money towards. And at the time was human services, youth development, kids stuff. But you put a twist on it when you were helping victims at the same time and taking these offenders. And we had doubts. The county, the chief of police, Harold Tom Cassidy, when we met, we had to go through city officials because basically reaching out to victims in the community, everybody was concerned. You're going to take kids in trouble with probation, in trouble with the law, and at-risk kids, these gang members. You're going to take them to somebody's business and home? Are you crazy? They're going to re-victimize these victims. But Chief Cassidy said, Jim, when you first told me about the idea, I thought you were smoking crack again. Water and oil, it doesn't mix. But you know what? Looking at your proposal, you know what? We signed off because we believe that you could do this and do it safely. And you asking victims what their wants and needs are. It's not on your agenda. But the graffiti, painting over, painting people's garages, fixing, people had their car windows knocked out, cleaning up after the crime scene. We even did homicide, Dave. 3 victims in Lincoln that we did homicide victims, that the victims, Jim, I want the kids to understand what I've been through. Bring them over. And we sat in a circle, a restorative circle, and we would process, how was you hurt emotionally, physically, financially, long-term, short-term? How was your neighbor impacted? And the kids had to document that. And then after an hour or so, we would say our goodbyes, or if we was doing a service job, cut the grass or clean the garage or whatever we were doing. After the hour service job, then we would go to McDonald's or Fun Center and process. Can anybody tell me what the victim said about being hurt? What feelings did he or she express? And they had the 6 core feelings on their paper. They just circle them. How were they hurt long term? That, well, Jim, they're never going to have a grandkid anymore. Their son is gone or their daughter's gone. Birthdays, Christmas. Oh, the kids were able to dissect that, and it made that emotional impact. That's where it actually we knew we hit gold. Because when you can accelerate the emotional growth process for young people and teach them how to deal with life on life terms. So that's how I said, well, let's replicate that for guys inside prison. So what I do now, though, Dave, is victims can come to our website and they can actually share anonymously how they were hurt. Murder, rape cases, robbery, vandalism, all those victims, could come to the website anonymously and share privately how they were hurt. And then we share their voices in prisons. That's how we elevate victims' voices now in my program. So some people say, well, you're teaching these victim impact classes, you're teaching offenders how victims are harmed, but we use real crime victims' voices. Because 52% of all violent crime victims never report it.
Never report the crime itself?
Never.
What do you attribute that to?
A lot of times, and there's no dig on police officer or law enforcement or court system, but a lot of times victims feel victimized twice. Once by the perpetrator and the second time by the system. Let's just take the plea deal. What is percentage of cases, Dave, that are pled down in the United States? What is the percent of cases that are pled down?
I got to go 80% or higher, probably.
It's about 98%, 98.8.
Wow.
The majority. So if somebody breaks into your house, Dave, God forbid, steal family heirlooms that were passed down, and luckily nobody was home. They catch the person who did this. 3-4 months later, you go to court, you find out that instead of the burglary and the theft, they dropped it down to attempted burglary, and they threw out the theft. How would you feel?
Like I'd been robbed again.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
They do that day in and day out in our criminal justice system.
You think that's because there's a lack of prosecutors, or there's just a lack of resources, or it's just easier to do that as opposed to having trials?
I have to honestly say, Dave, our system is so overburdened. They take it's an easier way to get the cases through the system, to get it. And we talk about this in class. What if every single offender that's been charged was to say they want a trial? They're not going to take the plea deal. Our system would crash. So again, I'm no legal expert, but people have. We talk about this, like I said, in every class, a lot of classes that, the threat, because the way our system is so punitive and so retributive, the threat, they're going to load me up if I don't take the deal. So I'm going to bend over backwards, do whatever, and I'm going to get this behind me and move on.
Right.
I hope you enjoyed the short segments from a recent interview I did with a good friend and colleague, Dave Nadelman. To view the rest of the interview and to learn more about the Community Justice Center, check out our social media pages and visit us at communityjusticecenter.org.